Welcome to Redbeard and the Den of Tools. Howdy ho, guys and gals, it's Red, your friendly neighborhood tool bear, back again here in the Den of Tools. And today we are going over another brief history lesson for you. Yep, today's topic is Big Orange, that is the history of Home Depot. Well, you know, this is unlike a lot of the other stories that I've told you where it was one man who started something that said they couldn't be done and you know, drove it all the way home. In this case, there are really six key players here in this story. This is the six guys who made specialty big box retail a driving force in America. First off, the captain of the ship, if you will, is the man with a vision. That is Bernard Marcus. Bernard was born in 1929 to Russian Jewish immigrants in scenic Newark, New Jersey. Okay, the Bear kids, Jersey gets a bad rap. Not Newark so much, but the rest of Jersey. Actually, the state's kind of pretty, but, you know, Newark, right? Anyway, so Bernie here wanted to become a doctor, you know, but money. So he did what a lot of kids back then did. He went to work for his dad, who was a cabinet maker. He earned enough doing that to be able to go to school on the side and eventually got his degree from Rutgers to be a pharmacist. He worked for years in a local drugstore, but found he was way more into like the retail side of things. That he just had more interest in that part of the business. And eventually he went to work for in management, I should say, for other retail establishments, eventually ending up as the CEO of Handy Dan Improvement Centers of Los Angeles. Bernard went on eventually to become the first CEO of Home Depot and served as chairman of the board until retiring in 2002. The number two guy at the bridge, manning the helm, if you were, is Arthur Blank. Now, Arthur was born to a Jewish immigrant family in Flushing, New York in 1946. Blank's father was a pharmacist, but he decided not to go that route, and he graduated from Babson College, went to work on the financial side of the businesses that he worked for, eventually winding up as president of Elliott's Drugstores. Just can't escape karma sometimes, huh? Anyway, a few years later, the parent company of Elliott's decided that there just wasn't enough money there and they wanted to sell them off. Well, they liked what Blank was doing, however, so instead of letting him go with the rest of the company, he got moved, slideways to another division and ended up over at Handy Dan's Improvement Centers, where he served as the senior VP of finance and eventually the CFO. Arthur spent 19 years as Home Depot's president before succeeding Marcus as the CEO. He retired in 2001 as co-chairman of the company. Now, the third player in our story is Pat Ferrara. Shockingly enough, Pat is not from the East Coast, nor does he have any connections to pharmacology that I can find. Pat's actually from SoCal. He dropped out of junior college after one whole year. Yeah, that was back in 1962, and went to work for National Lumber Supply in LA. He started as a stock boy and eventually worked his way up to executive VP and eventually GM. But in 1977, after a disagreement with the owners, he left the company. Seems that he had a big box dream that was not shared by the powers that be, and he was not content on letting it die. Instead, he struck out on his own and he founded a store called HomeCo. Now, while running HomeCo, he met Bernard and Arthur, who were off doing some business research of their own, and they were surprised to find out not only did somebody else share their idea of a hardware megastore, but somebody actually beaten them to the punch. But in talking with Pat, they found out that there was some real synergy there, so they looked into maybe buying into the company and, becoming part owners, equal shares, thirdsies, if you will. But the company had some serious financial issues. It'd been kind of quickly bootstrapped and unfortunately was carrying a lot of really bad debt because of that. And sadly, HomeCo could not escape its debt and closed only a year later. But Pat was not a man to give up on his dreams. He joined Bernard and Marcus and became the chief merchandising officer for Home Depot. He left the company in the early 90s to pursue some of his own projects, but came back rejoining the team in 96 and eventually retiring in 2002. The fourth man on this crew is Ron Brill. Now, Ron met Bernard and Arthur while he was already working at Handy Dan as part of the management team. Ron went on to eventually become Home Depot's first official employee. He worked there for over 20 years, eventually becoming the chief administration officer till he left the company in 2000. He went on to become the director of Circuit City and, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Pharmaca Integrative Pharmacies. Seriously, guys, what's the deal with you all in pharmacies? Anyway, the fifth man in our story is the villain. Yeah, that's Sanford Sigaloff, if I'm pronouncing that right. And if I'm not, I don't really care. You can refer to him by his self-coined nickname, Ming the Merciless. Yeah, I'm not kidding. This guy was so sleazy, he thought that was a cool nickname. A quick backstory on old Siggy here. He was backed by Michael Milken, if you remember who he was, and he is best known as the inventor of Slash and Burn School of Business. Yep, this is the type of guy that movies like Wall Street and Pretty Woman were based on. The guy who made billions by buying up struggling companies, firing everyone who actually knew what they were doing, and putting in new people who were 10 times cheaper and probably morons, and then selling off the pieces of that company because now it looked like it was financially solvent, even though it didn't have a clue what it was doing. At that time, Mr. Chapter 11, as the rest of Wall Street liked to call him, had just finished a takeover of Dillon Inc. And the crown jewel in Dillon's portfolio was an 80% ownership share of a well-run and quite profitable little company called, yep, you guessed it, Handy Dan. In fact, Handy Dan, under the management of Bernard Marcus, was doing so well that for many years it was the only thing keeping the rest of Dillon Corp in the black. Well, it wasn't long before Bernard and Sanford were butting heads. Sanford's story was that Bernard didn't understand the concepts of high finance and smart, business, acumen and such. However, what I think really came down to his old Ming there he'd been getting a lot of, cool press, at least the way he saw it, for being this big time Wall Street tycoon, and that he, had this rep that he could fix any business. Except for the fact that while Dillon Corp was doing better, it really wasn't due to anything he had done, but was instead, of course, due to Handy Dan and Bernard Marcus at the helm, who also refused to adopt Siggy's type of business model. He was more of a traditionalist in, working hard, having smart people working with you, and, and paying them and supporting them correctly. Something that Sanford was against. And the press picked up on this, and let's just say that Siggy wasn't the type that liked sharing the spotlight. Oh, and if you think that's petty, Sanford once said, "When people leave, I want to affect them economically, emotionally, and physically, so that people think twice before they try to turn on me." Oh, yeah, he's a charmer. Anyway, that brings in the quiet hero of our story, the unsung hero, if you will, in the form of a Mr. Kenneth Ligon. Kenny there was another pull yourself up by your bootstraps sort. Yeah, born in 1935 in Roslyn Heights, New York, into a fairly traditional Italian-American family. His father was a plumber, his mother worked in a cafeteria, and Ligon worked his way through school as, a bunch of different jobs. He was a butcher's assistant, a caddy, and a ditch digger. The world needs ditch diggers. Anyway, eventually graduating and going into finance as well, he was lucky enough to end up working with the likes of, say, Ross Perot. And he did well enough working with him and others that he was able to start his own investment firm and made quite a bit of money doing so. In 1976, he was looking for a new avenue to invest in, he wanted to see where the market was going and what was underappreciated. And he saw that there was real money to be made in home improvement. And he decided that that's where he wanted to put his bucks. And in doing his research, trying to find out the best avenue to approach there, he found out just how well this little company, Handy Dan, was doing. And he decided, to be honest, he didn't believe the numbers. He thought, there's someone's cooking the books or something. I got to go meet this guy, the CEO, before I invest in this company. So he flew out to have lunch with Bernard, and the two hit it off just, immediately. And in fact, in the next few months, Kenny there ended up buying up 19% of the company. Well, this also happened to be the point where Bernard was doing, shall we say, a little too well, at least by Sanford Sigaloff's standards. Or I should say by his egomaniacal viewpoint. He didn't like it, man. He's doing too good, making me look bad. There are stories, by the way, that every time a new article came out talking about how well Bernard and Handy Dan was doing and how it was keeping Dalen afloat despite, what Mr. Chapter 11 Wall Street there was doing, that he would go into a fit, and by he, I mean Sanford, would go into a fit of rage, trash his office, and, he just basically lose his mind and go down into the office building where his offices were and pick out a random employee and fire him on the spot. Yeah. Apparently that firing people made him happy. Jeez. Apparently he couldn't handle the fact that old Bernie there was making orange buckets full of cash and he was barely keeping Dalen afloat. Anyway, by 1977, Mr. Chapter 11 here, he'd had enough. He'd gone off the deep end and he was ready to fire Bernard. He called a board meeting and put it to a vote. And since his company owned 81%, he was, he didn't even think about it. Like, this is going to happen. I'm a majority stockholder. That's it. This guy's gone. I'm not going to, lose any more sleep over this dude showing me up. Except for the fact that at the last moment, Kenny there, remember he owned 19% of the company, said, excuse me while I whip this out. And he referenced a rule that had been enacted by the FTC in order to protect minority shareholders. Yeah, the short of it was that it was kind of weird, but if you owned too much of a company, you needed to get buy-in from all major decisions by all of the minority stockholders. Basically, that way that a major stockholder couldn't bully other shareholders around to the point where they could, say, devalue the company, then buy up the rest of it. Well, Kenny didn't just kill the vote. He called out Sanford for his BS and threw it in his face. Spiked the proverbial football, if you would. Well, any bets on how well you think Siggy there took this? Oh. Well, he turned this into a personal vendetta against Bernie and crew and made his life hell for the next year, while at the same time pestering Kenny pretty much weekly to sell him his shares. Every time bumping it up. I think it started like $3, then it was $4, then it was $8, and it was $10. And at the same time, just, hassling Bernard and saying, you have to make this quota and you have to this. It was a nightmare for him. And Bernard eventually couldn't take it anymore. He and Kenny had become friends, and he called him up. He said, look, do me a solid and just sell him your shares, will you? Get a good price for it, but, maybe if you sell him the shares, he won't see this as such a personal vendetta anymore, and he'll take some of the heat off my back. Yes, Ken didn't agree with him, but he did agree that he would sell the shares. So he called up Sanford, told him he'd be willing to sell at, get this, $25 a share. That's more than twice what the stock was supposedly worth. And Sanford agreed on the spot. A week later, after the sale was finalized, Sanford flew Bernie and his whole management team out to his offices. They were hoping this was going to be a meeting to reset and where they could bury the axe. Oh, there was some axe burying, all right. Yeah, they got the axe. When they got there, Sanford had them all split up and sent to individual meeting rooms where he walked in and summarily fired each and every one of them. Oh, jeez. In fact, and Sanford didn't let it go at that. For the next 4 years, Sigaloff used his influence in the government to attack Bernard and Arthur. He filed labor declassification proceedings against them, made accusations with the Justice Department and the SEC. He was trying to bankrupt them so that they could never recover. He told Bernie in a phone call, I'm going to fight you with the company's money, and you're going to fight me with your own money, which you don't have. Because you see, while Bernie was making Sigaloff rich by making Handy Dan one of the most successful companies in the U.S., he wasn't getting any money of his own. He was just pulling down a basic salary, not like you see CEOs do today. So here we had Bernie and Arthur, pretty much flat broke, trying to fight off, Sanford's little vendetta, little twit. Anyway, You tell the bear doesn't think highly of this guy. Anyway, they flew back to L.A. shortly thereafter, and they met with their buddy Ken to tell him all the good news. Ken told them, you know what, and this is a quote, he said, "You've just been kicked in the ass with a golden horseshoe. This is the greatest opportunity. Now we can open up that big mega superstore that you've been going on and on about." You see, Bernie and Arthur had shared with him their vision, their idea of what Handy Dan's could have been. And at the time, Handy Dan's, the store was about the size of, say, like an Orchard Supply Hardware. Or if you hadn't seen one of those before they got closed, think of an Ace Hardware, but larger, say like the size of a medium supermarket. But they saw that stores like this could be much more. I say much, much more, in fact. They had a vision of a massive hardware superstore. They pulled in Pat and Ron to help run things, while Kenny secured them $2 million in financing. All right, let's jump ahead to the next year. It's 1979. In Atlanta, Georgia metro area, they opened the first of 2 Home Depot stores. Yep, that's one there behind me. Yeah, in 1981, Home Depot went public and raised over $4 million in their initial public offering. Now, okay, those of us used to the whole .com IPO standards of today might think, well, yeah, it's nothing. But for back then, for a retail store, that was a pretty staggering sum. That same year, Home Depot started expanding outside of Georgia, opening stores in Hollywood, Florida, and Fort Lauderdale, Florida. In 1984, Home Depot had almost 20 stores across the U.S. with sales approaching $260 million. Bernard wanted to pick up the pace of their expansion, so Home Depot just outright bought Bowater Home Centers of Texas for a tidy $40 million. In 1989, 10 years after they had founded Home Depot, Handy Dan's went out of business, oddly enough. In fact, it's more coincident that happened to be the same year that Home Depot surpassed Lowe's and became the largest home improvement store in the United States. You know, they say living good is the best revenge. Yeah, I wonder how many people's souls Ming the Merciless there had to eat to recover from that news. Anyway, 1991, in an effort to appeal to homeowners as opposed to contractors and DIY types, Home Depot launched the Expo Home Centers. These were separate mega stores in their own right that specialized in higher-end products for home renovation and design. In 1984, Home Depot purchased Canadian hardware chain Aikenhead Hardware for $150 million with a 75% share. All of the Aikenhead hardware stores were later converted to Home Depot stores. By 1995, Home Depot was operating 350 stores across the U.S. and Canada and had sales in excess of $10 billion. 1997, San Diego-based Maintenance Warehouse was purchased by Home Depot. I think they bought it was at $245 million. This was a leading direct mail marketer and helped push Home Depot's reach outside of its stores and direct to the consumer. In 1999, Home Depot picked up Atlanta-based Apex Supply, a wholesale distributor of plumbing, HVAC, industrial pipe fittings, and such. Apex Supply was rebranded in 2004 as the Home Depot Supply. By 2000, Bernard and his team they were tired of all that winning, and it was time for someone else to take the reins. They brought in former GE executive Robert Nardelli to become CEO and president of Home Depot in 2000. And shortly thereafter, I think pretty much all of them retired, and from not just active, but even off the board. Bernard and Arthur were both billionaires by this point. Bernard decided he was done with business. He'd made a tidy sum, and he started a life of philanthropy. Bear can't talk. He became active in philanthropic endeavors. Arthur, on the other hand, he got bored and decided to get out and get more active. So he bought the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah, get down, Arthur. In 2001, Home Depot purchased Your Other Warehouse, a large plumbing distributor and a company apparently devoid of any sort of creativity, at least when it came to naming. Anyway, they picked them up. In 2004, Home Depot employees at the suburban Detroit store in Harper Woods rejected a bid to be represented by a labor union, voting 115 to 42 against joining the United Food and Commercial Workers if the union had won, the Michigan store would have been the first Home Depot to have a union. And I did some research, and I don't believe there is a store yet in the U.S. that is a union store. Home Depot entered the Mexican market in 2002 with the acquisition of home improvement chain Del Norte. Yeah, it's called the North. They also built stores in Mexicali and Tijuana. Those were all rebranded as Home Depot, and Home Depot is now all throughout Mexico. They got some sweet stores. Later in 2002, they launched Home Depot Landscape and Supply. This division was focused primarily on landscapers, professional landscapers, and sold mostly upscale plants and nursery products and such, eventually morphing into an entire plant nursery retail chain. Home Depot Landscape Supply, though, only lasted 5 years before it closed. My guess it was the timing. 2002, that means they closed around 2007, 2008. In September of 2005, with the internet bubble having come and gone, Home Depot decided it was time for them to get on the internet bandwagon. And they opened up Home Depot Direct, an online home furnishing store, followed shortly by the launch of Pace Trading Company, an online lighting store. 2006, Home Depot acquired Home Decorators Collection because apparently people needed to have lobsters on their walls. Who knew? That same year, they acquired Hughes Supply. Now, this was the largest home retailer in the United States. They paid $3.2 billion for them. Hughes Supply was integrated in Home Depot Supply, which was subsequently rebranded as HD Supply in 2007, and 5 months later, it was sold off to a group of 3 private equity firms. In 2007, the board of Home Depot and then CEO Robert Nardelli, they mutually agreed that he should seek employment elsewhere. Yeah, it's not you, it's me, and I don't like you anymore. Some say this was due to his heavy-handed management style, but I'm guessing it had more to do with his pay package, $123.7 million, not including his stock options. And these weren't even options, they were grants. The fact that Home Depot's stock was taking a nosedive compared to other stores like Lowe's didn't help his case at all. And then his severance package of $210 million was also criticized. I mean, he gets fired and gets a pay raise. I would like to fail like that. If somebody could please fire me in that kind of way or method, I would appreciate the help. Anyway, he was succeeded by Frank Blake, who had been the vice chairman and executive VP under Nardelli. Blake agreed to a more modest pay package and instead had a benefits package that was really heavily dependent upon the success of the company. I wonder if they picked that up from the Falcons business practices. Anyway, in 2008, the Great Recession hit, and the housing market took the biggest hit of all. Naturally, that made Home Depot and others fall on hard times, and Big Orange there was forced to lay off several thousand employees and close 54 stores, including the entire Expo Design Center chain. 2014, it was announced that Frank had enough. Poor guy took over right before then and had to keep him afloat through the Great Recession. That'd wear me out too. Anyway, he decided to step down as CEO and was replaced by Craig Menear. In 2015, Home Depot acquired Interline brands. That was a pretty nifty little purchase there for them. In 2019, it was announced that if you want to support the Den of Tools, be sure to like and subscribe. Also, we know it's hella cold out there these days, so why not support the Den and get yourself a little toasty warm by picking up one of our Den of Tools sweatshirts. Several colors and sizes available. Links, as always, are below the video and in the video description. Today, Home Depot has 2,000 stores. By comparison, Lowe's has 2,394 and Menards has 305. Now, hold on. I know you're going to say, well, that makes Lowe's bigger. Nah, not really. So while Lowe's has more locations than Home Depot, their stores on average are a good bit smaller. Also, Home Depot has a lot more divisions that are outside of the storefront, if you will. The difference in the two companies becomes really apparent when you look at the valuation. Home Depot has a market cap of $196.4 billion, while Lowe's is worth just over 75. That's over $100 billion difference. By comparison, Menards has a valuation of just over $9 billion, and Harbor Freight is estimated between 4 and 6. It's kind of difficult with Menards and Harbor Freight since they're privately owned and they don't have to publish quarterly earnings results and such. Anyway, I'm often asked, people are always pestering the bear, which do you prefer? What's your favorite one, Home Depot or Lowe's? And really, I'll be honest, it comes down to the classic Ford versus Chevy comparison. Home Depot carries DeWalt tools, of course, because they're aimed at the professional market there, but they also have a really tight relationship with TTI, and they carry many exclusive lines from them that you don't see in other places. They have brands from TTI like Ryobi, Rigid, Milwaukee, and Homelight. They're prominent throughout the store. Plus, Home Depot has a lot of their own house brands such as Husky, Workforce, and HDX. Actually, I'm actually a rather big fan of the HDX stuff for some budget hand tools. They're not that bad, and you can pick them up for a song right around or right after Christmas. Anyway, if there is a real difference between the two giants, it's kind of as I alluded to before, and that is that Home Depot is focused more on the professional contractor. They're there for the pros. That's their target market. Many of the home renovation options that you see there are referred to as contractor grade. It's kind of like a lower quality but still decent items such as cabinets and fixtures and stuff that you see there. They're often bought in bulk and used to build out homes, or a home or even a string of homes, like a subdivision and such. So, but Lowe's, on the other hand, they're more focused on the homeowner, the DIYer, the home improvement kind of thing. They often have higher to near custom level cabinets and fixtures. More of their products in the store are focused on the weekend warrior type projects, like say these kind of like adhesive stone packs that you can use to add a especially nice feature to your house, or easy install accent lighting for the backyard and such. But when it comes right down to it, you really can't go wrong with either of them. As well as I know, or I should say as we all know, strong competition like this is always a win for us, the consumers. Home Depot may not have invented the big box specialty store, but they were the first to really get it right. Today, they're the 5th largest private employer in the U.S. and a fixture in most communities. Anyway, there you have it. That's the story of Home Depot, how it got founded. A lot more drama. I'll be honest, I didn't really realize how much drama was involved in the founding of this company. But, you got to say, it's always nice when you see the good guys pull out a win like that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, maybe even learned a thing or two. As always, if you have any questions or comments, be sure to post them down below. Also, if you have any suggestions as for other topics for our brief history series, be sure to mention those as well. All right, that's it for the bear today. Take care, and as always, shine on.